Welcome back to Trailblazers, the series that showcases the bold HR, talent, and L&D leaders who are shaping the future of work with action, not just ideas. Brought to you in partnership by our friends at Balance, this is where AI meets real-world results from organizational transformation to workforce empowerment. In each episode, we sit down with pioneers turning AI theory into practice. And today's Trailblazer is a powerful example of just that. We're joined by Laurs, who's the Chief Learning Officer Americas at EY, an organization that's not only upskilling 400,000 employees in AI foundations, but is doubling down on something even more powerful, the human side of AI. During the conversation, Alex shares how EY is rethinking the role of L&D in an AI-powered world, from shifting mindsets to putting AI directly in employees' hands. He also talks about what's changed, what surprised him, and how L&D is evolving to drive real business value. Nadia, I'm really excited about today's conversation with Alex, but before we start, can you help me shape a strong narrative arc for this episode, from the why to the how to the human outcomes? Also, based on my previous episodes, where do I tend to rush or miss a chance to go deeper?
Chris, here's a crisp narrative arc you can use to guide your episode with Alex. 1. Why? What mindset shift sparked EY's massive AI journey? 2. How? How is EY putting AI in employees' hands, and what's actually changed? 3. Human outcomes. What's been the biggest impact on people, and how is L&D driving real business value? Your past episodes show real strength in setting a clear structure and pivoting when something interesting emerges. Where you tend to rush is right after a guest shares a story with emotional weight or a surprising twist, often moving to the next question instead of lingering for a follow-up like, what did that feel like in the moment? Or how did that change your perspective? You're also quick to get back on track if the conversation drifts, which keeps things focused, but can sometimes cut off deeper exploration. Noticing these moments and giving yourself permission to pause, especially when a guest reveals something personal, will help you unlock richer stories.
Thanks so much, Nadia. Let's jump into the episode. Alex, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Chris, for having me.
It's good to finally meet. I feel like we've got such a great shared community and network, but we somehow have never bumped into each other until now.
I know, it's amazing. But yeah, thank you for having me here. It was great we could make it.
Yeah. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about your background and your journey to where we are now.
Well, going way back when, I had no idea what I wanted to do coming out of university. I picked my university actually based on the fact I used to play sports. So I went to Sheffield. I was playing volleyball, which is not common in England, as you'll probably know.
Yes.
I was on the national team there and had dreams of playing professionally. That didn't play out. And I fell into sales jobs first and foremost, and was relatively good at it. And once you start getting good at sales jobs, you get asked to coach and mentor others. Again, I got into the kind of behavior change space. After my initial sales foray, I went into sales recruiting. So again, starting to get a bit more into the HR space, but again, it was typically a sales job. And I was actually recruiting sales and marketing professionals. So I got into that world a lot. And then my next job after that was I became a new hire orientation trainer. And I would train salespeople week in, week out on how to sell IT hardware and software. And that was when I really got into figuring out what I wanted to do for a career and understood what I love about human behavior change. And I didn't know it at the time, but the question that fascinated me was, how can two salespeople with arguably the same, all of the things being equal, they've got the same educational background, same work history, one is getting 3x the results, the other one is, and it's all down to the behavior and the way that they show up at the client. And I thought it was really empowering that it's like, oh, maybe as a learning and development professional, I can maybe impact that. And it grew from there. I had a great time at this IT organization that were called Insight. Great leaders that supported me and mentored me and gave me the kind of green space to actually explore new things, put me through training and certifications. In the UK, that's the CIPD. I really cherished that opportunity. It was only a small, medium-sized enterprise, but it was really groundbreaking for me personally in my career. And that unlocked an opportunity for me to go to Accenture, where I was for 12, 13 years, started in the UK. I'm now based in the US on the West Coast in California, Los Angeles. And it's been such a privilege and opportunity. You spend 12 years at a consulting firm, you get to work on a range of different clients. And it was funny, the red thread throughout my career there was I was always the sales effectiveness person or working on sales academies and sales workforce effectiveness. So my very first role, prepared me for that. And of course, my scope grew and broadened there. So I did everything from HR transformations to employee experience work. And again, I think that just opened up other opportunities. And I've been blessed and privileged to then, since Accenture, work at Cisco for a couple of years, most recently Amazon. And now I'm at Ernst & Young, which feels like a perfect match of all my prior experiences. I'm the Chief Learning and Development Officer there for the Americas region. So I know professional services, I know the learning and development space. So it's a nice marriage of all of those different things.
One of the things I was excited about is, you've been on that journey now, and I believe upskilling 400,000 employees in AI foundations, but at the same time doubling down on the human side of AI. Right. Could you just share, firstly, the why you went on that journey, and then we can sort of jump into some of the details?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, 400,000 people that we've trained on AI. Our AI foundations, which we called AI Now, got over 300,000 people going through it. In fact, I think the stat was 93% of our organization had gone through that. And by the way, we don't make any of that training mandatory. So it was really interesting, quite a surprise that the hunger was there to learn about it. We've since updated that kind of core foundations, and we had about 60-70% of people go through it in the first couple of months. So there's this real appetite and hunger to stay up to date, which is absolutely great. In parallel, or a fast follow, I should say, we've definitely focused on the human side of AI. And that was under the broader narrative that we had at the firm, which was to really address any anxiety or fears about using AI. So if I kind of wind back the clock, I think that's the first thing that really unlocked this kind of adoption of the training and adoption of the tools was the importance of the cultural tone that the organization set. We have a dual challenge as a professional services firm. Lots of organizations look to us to provide the advice that they need as they are going through their own change journeys. So what that means for my role as a CLO is that we have to upskill first and early, and have our employees be able to develop a perspective and a point of view and have those experiences. So speed to market for us is important, but actually I don't think that was the key unlock. The key unlock was our leaders saying, look, hey, AI is coming. And obviously when Gen AI burst on the scene, we were sort of ready for it from a data standpoint internally. And that meant that our employees, and once we deployed our internal solution, which we call EYQ, it was easier for people to start to adopt and play with that. And we had to set the tone that this is about augmenting yourself with AI and amplifying your human skills. This isn't about taking the efficiencies that we might get in certain tasks and certain processes and returning that to the bottom line. That's ultimately the fear that most people have. It was about how do we unleash more human potential there. And then over time, we start to double down on those human skills, curiosity, creativity, co-creation with AI, things like that.
Yeah, love that. Well, firstly, I love you start with, we need to practice what we preach first and foremost. And I love the fact that you focused on, before the technology, the cultural and the mindset shift. Because if you don't get that part right, that's where, and then that's kind of, I'm sure you probably know that now, but that's why you had such a great adoption, because you spent the time and energy on that. But I think the struggle for our audience is, when you talk about the human side of AI, what does that look like in a practical sense? Now, what are some of the specific things that you did? Because that's the thing that companies are really struggling with right now.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I would say encouraging exploration and experimentation is foundational. So the way that we've been talking about it internally, we've moved from education to experimentation to make sure that as we continue to see where this technology evolves and what it can do, we have to share, we have to experiment in a safe way, and then share the results of those failures and the successes. And the failures are just as important, if not more important, than the successes. So I think that in itself is a pretty humanistic component in not all cultures. I was at a dinner last night, and we were just having a conversation where failures, people want to drive innovation, but they're not celebrating failures. And it's so important to actually do that. And I think that that's the major component, I think, to the human side of adopting AI, is that you actually are there playing with it, understanding what it can and can't do. And what we've taken is the view that, yes, I think there's a narrative out there that, yes, AI can do a lot of stuff, and therefore it is amplifying the importance of human skills. But I think the narrative there is sometimes is because only humans can do these things and do these things well, like curiosity, empathy, EQ. And that might be partly true, but what I also think is interesting, if we're honest with ourselves, is humans are not ubiquitously good at those skills either. When's the last time you came home from work and said, it's just a normal day at the office. Everybody was really empathetic today. Everyone demonstrated a high level of EQ. We're not that good at it, consistently. And what I think is interesting is AI can actually help you be better at those human skills. It can help you improve them. And if you're already great at them, it can help amplify those and extend and augment your leadership capability.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating, though, that we focus so much of the conversation around the technology, but where we're seeing the most impact is actually on the human side with those power skills. So it's almost like the AI is kind of really made up for a lot of the technical skills and allowed us now to really double down and create a hyper-personalized experience for the individual to help develop those power skills.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's all about how you work with AI, not that working with AI makes you less intelligent, doesn't help you learn. I think it's all about teaching people how to work with it to make sure that we extend our capabilities truly.
Yeah. So how did you go about doing it? Was that creating like a sandbox, an AI sandbox internally that people could play around with and experiment? What did that look like?
In some contexts, yes, for our highly technical resources, but more broadly, I'll give you an example of one of the programs that we launched from the learning and development team, which is a hackathon. We call it Future Hack. And that's just using our live production tools. That's evolved as a program over the years and months. Initially, truthfully, it was more of an idea-a-thon where we were, submitting ideas. And this is, to describe it, an intensive 5-week learning experience. So it's quite a time commitment. And people that go through it, they learn design thinking skills, they learn problem framing skills. They get training from our high performance communication group on how to pitch and storytell. And it becomes a competition at the end. So people work in groups to identify a problem statement and a challenge that's being worked on, and that they ideate. And in some cases, they did prototype solutions that then get presented, and ultimately there's one winner. So they learn about AI, they learn about all of these other skills like design thinking and problem solving. What's amazing is just to see the creativity from the bottom up in the organization. So we do things like that on a regular basis. That has now evolved to what I would say is a true hackathon, as we now have agentic AI in the hands of everybody, where you can actually build real stuff. We just launched one recently over the summer, where again, we had 93 agents that were built that had a practical application in the organization. Now, they're not all live in production, but they have the ability to take them back into the business units, into the functions that we have, and start to evaluate, okay, is this something we want to take and move into production? But it's great because you've got a great wireframe to start from. So it's great for innovation. It's great for a learning and development, and just really puts it in the hands of our people. It might be worth kind of pointing out that we have I can frame up our AI strategy at EY, if that's helpful, the kind of AI transformation journey that we're on. There are essentially 3 buckets, which is transform our clients, transform EY, and then transform the world, which I know sounds kind of grand, but again, that's about responsible AI, how we can shape policy, given that we're a large employer. And on the transform our clients and transform EY, it was absolutely about what are the business use cases that we can work on. So we worked with each of the business unit artificial intelligence leads to say, what are the most pressing issues excuse me, in your area that we should be working on? Can we frame a challenge statement for your employees to work on? So again, that top down and bottom up approach to really get the business need. That's the first part. And then I think the second part that's important is I see L&D's role as arguably getting out the way. We need to set the foundations and the conditions for success. Yeah. But if everything comes through L&D, we're going to be too slow to react. So we have to have, what do you call it, learning at the edge, learning in the business, change and adoption networks, which I know many organizations will have, but I would strongly advocate for them, where people are sharing and learning, and not all of that knowledge needs to come back through L&D.
What do you think this means for the future of the role of the L&D function in an organization?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions. Like you said, we're so early. Yeah. I don't think anyone has the perfect crystal ball answer here. But I think about it a lot. I think I think we're going to have a couple of different things. I think about like learning and development as a business, and a lot of what we put on are products, services, and experiences to help change behavior in the organization. And I fundamentally believe that there'll be a new sort of flavor of product out there, which is having a conversation with AI. Personally, that's one of my favorite ways to interact with it, is to have a live conversation and go voice to voice. And I think the application there, not only just in coaches, but in tutors to get really hyper personalized learning is amazing. Like you say, we're very early on in that tech journey, but what it means, I think, very tactically from a learning operating model standpoint, we insourced a lot of our content development over the years. So I'm blessed to have a large design studio, which produces content. And as we know, Gen AI's biggest disruptive or most disruptive area, arguably, has been the production of content, copy, video, music, you name it. So what does it mean for that organization? I want to be very proactive and say, like, how do I, whether reskilling people, like how do I reskill my own design studio to say, okay, if conversational AI is going to be one of the product set, it won't just replace everything. But if that's one of the ways that we interact with learning, what skills do you need? How do we need to work closely with IT? When does it become more IT's responsibility versus our responsibility? I know there's a lot of low code capability, but instead of designing, storyboards in Adobe Articulate, how are we just building agents and, architecting conversation flows that have, a learning science approach to them? I think that's going to be interesting to see how we can reskill and repivot what a classic content design function will actually be. So again, back to this whole learning, getting out of the way of the business. I want to work proactively with IT and with the business and other stakeholders to understand where do the four walls of the traditional learning function start to kind of erode a little bit by design, and what does that mean for what both of our respective organizations are going to have to do. I think that learning content and learning knowledge, has the ability to be sort of atomized into organizational knowledge and just become its own knowledge base that we can then surface up into new and interesting, I will call them AI-driven learning products rather than coaches, because I think that's way too broad. I think, again, we're very early in that journey, but I'm very excited about it. And we're actively, looking at how we can evolve our function.
Oh man, I wish we had another hour just to talk about that. just what you just described. There's so much that we're working on in that space, and it's fascinating. What does that mean now for the skills that you need in your own team? Because what we're talking about is a fundamental shift, and in terms of the type of skills and capability that you now need within your own team, right? And the mindset shift.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the mindset shift. Yes, there are technical skills. I think obviously is really important. Technical and AI skills, understanding how to actually use the tools and technology and what it can do. And then I think for part of our organization, we're gonna have to get deeper technology skills to understand, even in the low code environments or on the back end, like how do things work? How does this all work together? When I've been experimenting and the team have been experimenting with their own personal agents, I think data and knowledge of data structure and data architecture to the right kind of, throttle to the right level for our organization becomes important as well. And then some of those mindsets and maybe some of the human skills as well. I think we're going to have to continue to focus on value identification. The danger and the hype with all of this is we have a lot of hammers looking for nails. I think a unique skill is going to be, what problem are we solving? Just because it can do this, should we do this? Is it going to be the best way to actually get to the outcome here? It's not always the right way.
How do you personally stay up to date and ahead of so much change just coming at you as a CLO? Because I'm sure you're getting emails and calls every day and people telling you they can solve every problem you have. And there's out there. What is any like framework do you have, or like strategy that you personally to control your own time and learning?
The first is a mental model is to kind of be more compassionate with myself. Like I don't have to read everything all the time. It's okay. The analogy is this is a river, not a lake. I don't have to consume the whole lake. I can just pick, as things combine the river, I can pick and kind of choose. And that kind of gives me some sense of calm. So I'm not freaking out. And then of course, the other way to stay on top of it is experiment yourself. I think it's the most important thing that's driven change in our learning function. We say it a lot to say, leaders need to demonstrate how they are experimenting, but do it. I was at a conference recently where Adam Grant spoke, and I felt like I was doing it. Adam Grant was a speaker at this conference, and as it was wrapping up, there was a question from the audience to Adam which was quite nice because they said, hey, you're in a room with 3,000 HR professionals. What should we all be thinking? What questions should we ask ourselves? And he thought about it and he said something I thought was really helpful in the way he framed it. He said, ask yourself, what did I experiment with this week? And I thought that when he put it time bound like that, I thought that's really, really helpful. So I've started to make the commitment to my own team that I will share what I've been experimenting with this week and what it actually looks like. It might be every 2 weeks and kind of just share, based on my time and my calendar, but really sharing and giving screenshots and demos. I do video blog updates to my entire learning organization, share what I'm experimenting with.
Last question before I let you go. Many people listening here are just starting their journey. What advice would you give to people just starting? And maybe if you reflect looking back on when you started, is anything you would have done differently?
I think looking back, persevere. This whole sort of jagged frontier of you see something, you have an assumption, you create an expectation about what AI can and can't do. And again, there's this overarching narrative of efficiency and speed. And when you don't instantly get the results of efficiency and speed, or you don't even get the quality output that you want, it's very easy to become dissatisfied with the process, get frustrated, and then just check out mentally for whatever period of time, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and go, oh, okay, I should try it again now. Maybe it's got a bit better. Persevere. And in the short term, set up more time to experiment and make those mistakes, because there's a big learning arc there up front that you need to understand. You're not going to get those efficiency and speed gains in the short term as you are checking the work, as you are the human in the loop, as you are figuring out it did something that you didn't want it to do. That also all takes time. So I think just, being, again, gracious with yourself that you're not going to get all the efficiency savings up front. Use that time that is going to be spent by checking, learning, reflecting, thinking about how to use it. So I think what I would have changed is I would have protected more time rather than like, oh, I've got 5 minutes between meetings, I'm going to give this thing a go. No, plan time for it, prioritize it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on, and super excited, and congrats for the journey so far. It is a journey and it's going to continue to evolve. And, but what an exciting time, right? For the profession,
Really
for the world, right? And like our HR leaders, our tagline when we first started, which is still the same, is to shape the future of work for business and society. And to your point, we want to democratize access to skills and content and education, which is part of what we do here. So it's incredible that was part of your 3 pillars. I completely related to that when you said that, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you for having me.